Welcome to the special edition of Big Data and Brews with Tony at Hadoop Summit. Hey Tony.
Oh, Stefan, good
How
to see you again.
What are we drinking today? Do you like Stella?
Stella!
It's nice and cold though.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to sip?
I would love it.
All right.
Or put it this way, I thought you'd never ask. I thank you, sir. Is this like comedians in cars driving around for coffee? The Seinfeld thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
You know, as a CEO, you can almost design your job, and I thought making a video show drinking beer with really smart people would kind of the best thing I can do in my job.
Or at least drinking beer.
Yeah. So, what are the big new things from your perspective at the Hadoop Summit? Anything you're really excited about?
It's kind of funny because, like, in my presentation, earlier today, I was kind of going through in a way it's kind of like, in a way, there's just nothing new in this industry, but everything's new. And so last year, of course, you had graciously sat on my panel as being basically the dissenting voice, as vendors were in a rush last year to plant their stakes, saying we do interactive SQL in Hadoop.
Yeah.
As I recall, there were a couple guys sitting next to you who basically spent part of the session saying my interactive SQL is faster than yours.
And we had that a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
I wrote more code for Hadoop than you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm more scalable than you. I'm less fault tolerant than you. And now I'm more interactive SQL than you.
As I get older, I have to be tolerant of more faults. So that's just one of the lessons I've learned, and not just in this industry. But takeaways from this event, probably I mean, obviously beyond the expanded enterprise focus, was that obviously last year vendors planted their stakes in interactive SQL, and this year they're basically painting it as the battleground. And there have been a lot of questions about basically is SQL now, or I should say, is Hadoop now just a big SQL machine? Not trying to steal any trademarks there. I actually just came out with a post earlier this morning. And it is my fervent hope, of course I don't want to steer any IT people down the path to addiction, but I do hope that in one way I do, which is that I'm hoping that SQL will be the gateway drug to Hadoop.
That's an interesting idea, yeah. I mean, I definitely can see that you want to lower the barrier to entry, and people we always go the path of the lowest resistance, right? If I know SQL, why don't I run SQL on Hadoop?
Well, here's the deal. It's like, where do you start? And I think there is a point to be made that if we start someplace, what's to keep us from continually doing what that's in our comfort zone?
Right.
No question that there's certainly concern about that. On one hand, you have to look at what the talent base, the skills base is out there, and yes, you have lots of computer science programs out there, that are turning out data scientists or quote-unquote data scientists, whatever that is. I'm still trying to meet one. I've met a bunch that have it on their card, so that's so they must be data scientists. And of course, it's given new life, new relevance to Java developers, and now can graduate from the middle tier to actually doing something.
Yeah.
Oh boy, I'm going to get a lot of people. There's probably going to be a contract out of my head after this one. Okay, no, Java developers actually have been very important. Okay, I like Java developers.
But you that's your Java development is your undergrade, and then you do statistics on top of that.
Right. Yeah. Well, the thing is, here's the deal. What I'm getting at though is that, sure, there are those folks that are coming out of computer science programs, and that's good, and we want to encourage that. We want organizations to enrich themselves and get some new blood.
Yeah.
On the other hand, let me ask you, do you think it's realistic to go to an IT organization and say, okay, we now have a new platform and a new means for analytics, so should we basically not utilize the skills that your staff already has, that already exists?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly... that's the challenge, right? You go into a big organization and you have 1,000 people that know SQL.
Right.
And what was really interesting, so I talked to Neil yesterday, and he said, well, there's the hoodies, the people that come in, that did Ruby on Rails before.
By the way, Neil's going to have to answer his comments tonight in San Diego. I will see them personally.
So he said, there's the hoodies that come in and they did Ruby on Rails, and they used active records. They never wrote an SQL query in their life. And those guys now doing Hadoop. And then you have the people that spend the last 10 years doing, you know, a data cube and this and that. So yeah, it's certainly, you know, there's a shift here, right? What I think it's interesting, the people that never did SQL do web development now. In 5 years they're architects, and maybe in another 5 years they are CIOs. So maybe
that's being pretty optimistic.
Yeah,
that's a pretty fast career, career trajectory.
You know, but you get the idea, right? So I think it will move in that direction. That said, though, we definitely see that you know, the lowest barrier to entry is to write some SQL scripts on Hadoop, right? The challenge with that, though, is that people very fast run into a wall. So they think, oh, Hadoop can SQL. Right. Let me use a BI tool that uses SQL on top of Hadoop, and it generates an SQL script big like this with 1 million subqueries and combined keys and what have you, because you point and clicked something together. And you know, Hive just builds.
Right.
It does nothing else than just oops, and that's it.
Yeah.
So I think there's we very frequently see the it can SQL. Oh, actually it can't. And the challenge is, at what point do you figure that out? The moment you roll it into production, or early enough to like...
You know, Stefan, you know what we should be doing right now? We should both be sitting, there's a session going on at the moment about the difficulties of writing SQL inside Hadoop.
Oh. The interesting thing is, I think over time, what people will go for is applications on top. Because nobody would write their own CRM system, right? Everybody would buy Salesforce.
Right.
But those applications generate terrible SQL code that no SQL engine, I would argue, can handle at this point. Right. Because Hadoop never was intended to do this way.
But let me kind of, sort of, seize on that, which is that I was out on Monday. Hortonworks actually had this very good session. They basically got a bunch of analysts together, including those. Actually, I don't think Neil was in the room that day. We didn't have the hoodie guy there. I'm surprised. But anyway, but everybody but him. But anyway, at the end of the day, they had a panel of some of their customers. Now, of course, being referenced customers, these guys are going to be basically pretty ahead of the curve by definition.
Yeah.
I asked them.
They might got a discount, to be honest.
Well, they're. I'm not even going there. But but the deal is, the point on is that I then asked them a question. This sort of feeds into what you're saying, which is, what type of skills did you need? And I sort of asked, did you really need data science? And what they answered was, well, we're looking for our teams, our Hadoop teams. We look for Java programmers, Python programmers, statistical programmers. And I turned, actually, there's a guy next to me who was from Hortonworks, from the marketing side, and I turned to him and I just said, wrong. I said, right for those organizations, obviously, because doing some very bleeding edge work.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to build a commercial market, this is not going to rely. You cannot build a market that is reliant on basically customers having their own staffs doing programmatic, basically one-off solutions.
Yeah.
Well, that's just not going to scale.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly what that goes to what you're saying. This has to be this has to be a market that is populated very heavily with applications and tools.
Yeah. And I think we get there, right? I mean, Datamir may be just the first company. There's other companies coming.
I hope there are more.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that we still kind of want the only one that you.
Well, put this
to
way,
be honest,
you're one of a very few. At this point, I'm actually quite surprised. I've got to expect this time next year there got to be more.
Yeah.
Where I'm seeing, I think a lot of the emphasis at this point is I'm seeing a lot of buzz around data preparation, which is also a really important part of it.
But it's just a piece of it.
I agree, but it's a part. There's no one thing that's going to be the grand unifying solution. It's like even the BI and data warehousing world. Even though there were always attempts by certain vendors to say we will be the all-encompassing solution, the reality was really kind of best of breed stack.
Yeah.
And to me, what was the signifying moment, in that market, and why I see that history is definitely repeating itself here, is that I'm going to take us back. I've used this story a number of times. Shoot me if you've heard it before, but that was at one of the last big DB expos in San Francisco, Moscone. This was back in 1996. I remember it because I had a really nice vacation before that with my wife and a bed and breakfast up in Sonoma. We had a wonderful time, and by the way, the dress that she bought still fits her. It's a compliment to my wife. Or the fact I don't feed her enough. No, she actually is. She's kept her figure very well, I will say. But anyway, so we're down there. But anyway, I got a call from this PR firm, and they said, we have this company. They're too small to exhibit at DB Expo, but would you mind coming up to the hotel suite the day before? We'd love to show this to you.
Yeah.
It was Informatica.
Oh.
And like,
tiny
think about
company.
Everyone has to start someplace. But the deal is that at that time, what was data warehousing? Number one, data warehousing, we had relational databases were on their way to becoming the de facto enterprise standard. They weren't established yet, but they were on their way.
Yeah.
Y2K really hastened that. You had these rich client desktops, so you had this appetite for more than green screen reports. In effect, with relational databases creating the illusion of open data, there was this perception that there was it's kind of like a big data of its time. Like, we have all this data, access to all this data that's now been liberated from jailhouses.
Yeah.
Except, what is a data warehouse?
Right.
What kind of data do you put in there? What do you have to do to it? Oh, you need to write. You need to transfer. Well, I guess you have to write a script. It's not very repeatable. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever heard of data quality, and so seeing something like Informatica, which was designed as a tool, a visual tool that looked like a data modeling tool that existing database professionals could understand. And then you follow that with also like other tools that simplified query reporting instead of having to write some 4GL language. And that was basically what led to the path for BI and data warehousing to become a mainstream enterprise market. And it's basically the same track I'm really starting to see here.
I think so too, right? I think the history will maybe not repeat itself, but certainly rhymes, right? So infrastructure, the Hadoop vendors are kind of the old databases, and they're competing, and it gets very quickly commoditized. More people have it. I think in the beginning, right, people wrote stored procedures and SQL-C and what have you, and then more and more standard became ANSI SQL, 92 to blah blah blah, and then bring it together. So I think we will see this here too. And I think for me as a vendor, what is really interesting is that the value creation was less in infrastructure. The value creation was in the enablement of the next generation of applications.
Exactly.
And that's kind of what is really fascinating for us to see, because we're very close to, people actually doing something, and we want to focus on that, where a lot of other folks, of course, we're running 3 seconds faster. Nobody cares. Right? You want to get an insight. You want to do something. You want to change the world, not just faster, more secure, more scalable. Doesn't really matter.
Well, you want to contribute some value. It's like
that would be nice. Nice to have.
One of my colleagues on the panel says that like a lot of IT professionals are doing this because they want to put this on their resume. And I can actually. There is a lot of that, and actually, I saw that with some of at Ovum, some of our enterprise clients. I was doing a trip with some of our basically an Asia Pac tour. We have a lot of clients in Pacific Rim, and it was in Kuala Lumpur and KL, and great chaotic city, and I have some very fond memories of the place. But anyway, I was at this insurance company. Insurance companies are not exactly known for state-of-the-art technology.
No?
I mean, Stefan, I have some stories to tell you.
I think that's our customers that love our mainframe connector. That makes me scratch. Like that's where like, oh really? And you run my insurance? Okay.
Well, here's the deal, and unfortunately, it's going to be another Informatica story. But anyway, so we're there. One of these clients that we're visiting, it's like their big concern is why was Informatica halting support on AS400 version 2?
Yeah.
What can we do? But meanwhile, towards the end of the meeting, the younger guys in the room were saying like, how can I get some experience on Hadoop? How can I want to get? And so I mean, there is that hunger out there. I told them, you got to have some meetups out there. You got to have some open data to play with, And I would love to see them basically play with, maybe like you have a community edition and like play with tools like yours and say, hey, let's work with this stuff. We can actually, we can have fun. We can actually do some civic good. Actually, working with a nonprofit project with all this open data.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool ways to do this stuff, and eventually this is going to percolate its way into the enterprise.
Yeah. Well, so we have an open trial that you can play with your Facebook data. In fact, we're printing out our Facebook data.
I don't want to play with my Facebook data, I'm sorry.
So, I think it will be really interesting to see when we bring open and internal data together, what kind of insights people will get.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for stopping by.
Thank you, sir.
Always good to have a drink with you.
Always a pleasure. Do it again.